Julian West stood at the threshold of his kitchen, observing his wife, Charlotte, as she prepared dinner with practiced efficiency. 12 years of marriage had turned their routines into clockwork precision, but there was nothing mechanical about the way he still found himself admiring her. The grace with which she moved, the slight furrow of concentration between her brows as she chopped vegetables. "Need a hand?" he asked, rolling up his sleeves. Charlotte smiled without looking up. "I got it covered. How was your meeting with that potential client?" Julian leaned against the counter. "Promising. The Highcrest account could be our biggest yet." His architecture firm had started in their garage, with Charlotte supporting them through those lean early years by working her corporate job at Horizon Industries. They'd been 24 and full of dreams when they married, both ambitious but united in building a life together. Now, at 36, Julian's firm was finally gaining traction, though still nowhere near the prestige of Horizon, where Charlotte had risen to senior marketing director. "That's fantastic," she said, but there was a distracted quality to her voice that Julian had been noticing more frequently. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Julian caught Charlotte checking her phone for the third time in 30 minutes. When she noticed his gaze, she quickly set it face down. "Work never stops," she explained with a tight smile. "Speaking of work," Julian said, settling into bed beside her, "don't forget I cleared my schedule for your company Gala next month. First time in 3 years, I'll actually make it to one of these things." Something flashed across Charlotte's face. "Oh, about that. It might be better if you sit this one out. These events are just boring corporate politics. I thought we agreed I should make an appearance," Julian replied, feeling a strange unease settle in his stomach. "You've mentioned how everyone brings their spouses." "It's just," Charlotte sighed. "My new boss is really focused on keeping these events professional. Some of the executives have complained about previous years getting too casual." It was a reasonable explanation, but something in her delivery felt off. Julian had built his career reading blueprints and spotting structural weaknesses. For the first time, he felt like he was seeing hairline cracks in the foundation of his marriage. The next morning, Julian left early for a site visit. As he backed out of the driveway, he noticed a sleek black Tesla slowing down near their house before accelerating away. He thought nothing of it until he spotted the same car 3 days later, parked 2 blocks from their home. That afternoon, he called Charlotte from his office. "Hey, I forgot some drawings at home. Are you still at work?" "Yes, quarterly planning meeting. Won't be home until late," she replied, her voice slightly hushed. In the background, he could hear the distinct ambient noise of a restaurant. That night, Julian stared at their wedding photo on the mantel. Charlotte had been radiant in her simple white dress, clutching wildflowers. He'd been so proud, so certain they would defy the odds. His own parents had divorced when he was 12, his father walking out for a younger woman, leaving his mother to raise him alone while working 2 jobs. He'd promised himself his marriage would be different. Julian opened his laptop and hesitated for a long moment before typing. "Signs your spouse is having an affair." Julian wasn't proud of his next decisions. He installed a tracking app on Charlotte's phone while she showered. He noted her passwords when she entered them. He even drove past her office building one evening when she claimed to be working late, finding her parking spot empty. 2 weeks of surveillance yielded patterns. Tuesday lunches that extended too long. Friday work meetings that ended with her coming home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. Text messages that she deleted immediately after reading. The man's name was Emmett Bishop, newly appointed Chief Strategy Officer at Horizon Industries, transferred from the Winfield office. 43 years old, divorced, no children, graduate of Wharton Business School. His Tesla had become a regular sight in Julian's discreet surveillance. Julian found him on LinkedIn, studied his profile, his accomplishments, the professional headshot of a square-jawed man with confident eyes and salt and pepper hair. He was everything Julian wasn't: corporate, polished, powerful within Charlotte's world, in ways Julian could never be with his more creative, entrepreneurial career. One night, Julian followed Charlotte to an upscale restaurant downtown. Through the window, he watched as Emmett greeted her with a kiss that was anything but professional. The sight hit him like a physical blow, despite having suspected it for weeks. That same night, Charlotte returned home at 11:30, claimed she'd been networking with clients. Julian pretended to believe her, kissed her goodnight, then went to the guest bathroom and vomited until his throat burned. The next morning, he drove to his office early and found himself staring at the building designs on his desk without seeing them. Darius Fernandez, his business partner and oldest friend since architecture school, found him there an hour later. "You look like hell," Darius observed, setting a coffee on Julian's desk. "Everything okay?" Julian considered lying, but the weight of his discovery was crushing him. "Charlotte's having an affair." Darius's expression shifted from shock to anger to sympathy in seconds. "Are you certain?" "Certain enough," Julian replied. "With her new boss. Been going on at least 2 months from what I can piece together." "What are you going to do?" Darius asked. "Confront her?" Julian rubbed his temples. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to walk away. Another part wants to burn everything to the ground." "Careful with that second option," Darius warned. "Scorched earth leaves nothing to rebuild on." "Maybe there's nothing worth rebuilding," Julian replied, his voice hollow. That evening, Julian received a text from Charlotte. "Have to attend company gala this weekend. Emmett insists all department heads be there." He stared at the name on the screen. She'd never mentioned her boss by first name before, a small slip that confirmed she had no idea Julian knew. "I thought that was next month," he replied. "Last-minute planning change. Sorry for the confusion. Don't wait up Saturday." Julian set down his phone, a cold clarity washing over him. 12 years of marriage was dissolving before his eyes, but he wasn't going to be like his father or become a victim like his mother. If his marriage was ending, it would be on his terms. He called Neil Hardy, his college roommate who now worked in corporate security. "Neil, I need a favor off the books." Neil met Julian at a bar across town, away from anywhere Charlotte might have connections. A former military intelligence officer before moving to the private sector, Neil had the resources Julian needed. "I'm not helping you do anything illegal," Neil clarified immediately, keeping his voice low despite the ambient noise. "I just need information," Julian assured him. Background on Emmett Bishop, professional history, personal habits, any skeletons. Neil studied his old friend's face. "And when you have this information, what then?" "Then I decide if my marriage is worth saving or if I need to protect myself." 3 days later, Julian had what he needed. Emmett Bishop had an impressive resume, but also a pattern. 3 companies in 15 years, each departure following rumors of affairs with colleagues. His divorce had come after his ex-wife discovered his relationship with a subordinate. At Horizon Industries, he'd fast-tracked Charlotte's promotion to senior director shortly after his arrival, unusual given her relatively short tenure. Most valuably, Neil discovered Emmett was being groomed to replace the retiring CEO, Elizabeth Townsend, in the next year. The appointment wasn't public knowledge yet, but the board had already made their decision. Emmett's pristine reputation was crucial to this transition. Julian spent the next 2 weeks crafting his approach with the same meticulous attention he gave his architectural designs. He created a secure email account, documented Charlotte's patterns, photographed her rendezvous with Emmett, researched Horizon's corporate policies, particularly their strict rules against relationships between managers and subordinates. The company gala, the real one, not the fictional event Charlotte had used as cover for a weekend with Emmett, was approaching. Julian found the invitation buried in Charlotte's desk drawer. He noted that despite her dismissals, it explicitly welcomed spouses and partners. He also discovered something else, a hotel receipt that Charlotte had accidentally printed with other work documents. The Mapleton Hotel downtown, from 2 weeks prior. Room service for 2, champagne, a charge for late checkout. The night before the gala, Charlotte mentioned casually over dinner, I have that work event tomorrow night. Probably won't be home until late. Julian nodded. The quarterly review meeting, right? You mentioned it earlier this week. Right, she agreed, looking relieved he remembered the lie. It's usually a boring spreadsheet marathon. Well, good luck with it, he said, raising his wine glass in a toast. To climbing the corporate ladder. She clinked her glass against his, unaware that he had already RSVP'd to the gala as her +1. That night, while Charlotte slept, Julian finalized his preparations. He wasn't going to confront her yet. The gala would be just the first move in a longer game, one where he controlled the board. The next morning, Julian kissed Charlotte goodbye as she left for meetings before her fabricated review session. He waited until her car disappeared down the street before picking up his phone. Darius, I need a favor tonight. The Meridian Global Annual Gala had transformed the grand ballroom of the Bellevue Hotel into a glittering showcase of corporate success. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over executives in tuxedos and designer gowns, while waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Julian arrived precisely at 8:30 in the evening, knowing Charlotte would already be inside. He wore a tuxedo he purchased specifically for this evening, a sharp, tailored piece that cost more than he'd ever spent on clothing. If he was walking into his wife's world, he would look the part. At the registration table, the hostess smiled. Good evening, sir. Your name? Julian West. I'm Charlotte West's husband. She checked her tablet. Yes, Mr. West. You're at table 7 with Senior Director West. Welcome to Horizon Industries' annual Excellence Gala. The ballroom was crowded, but Julian spotted Charlotte immediately. She stood near the bar, laughing at something Emmett Bishop was saying. Her red dress, one Julian had never seen before, complemented her figure perfectly. Emmett's hand rested casually against the small of her back, a possessive gesture between lovers, not colleagues. Julian approached slowly, observing. 3 other executives stood with them, champagne flutes in hand. He recognized Elizabeth Townsend, the current CEO, among them. Charlotte saw him first. The shock on her face would have been comical under different circumstances, her smile freezing, eyes widening, color draining from her cheeks. Julian, she exclaimed, too loudly. What are you doing here? He leaned in to kiss her cheek. Surprising my wife. You mentioned how important these galas are, and I wanted to support you. Emmett extended his hand, the picture of corporate confidence despite the momentary confusion in his eyes. You must be Charlotte's husband. Emmett Bishop, Chief Strategy Officer. Julian West, he replied, shaking Emmett's hand firmly. I've heard almost nothing about you. An awkward laugh from the group. Elizabeth Townsend stepped forward. So you're the mysterious architect husband. Charlotte rarely brings you to our events. Work keeps me busy, Julian explained smoothly. But I wouldn't miss this one. Charlotte's been working such late hours recently. I was beginning to forget what she looked like. Charlotte's smile tightened. Julian, could I speak with you for a moment? She led him to a quiet corner, her fingers digging into his arm. What are you doing? I told you I had a review meeting tonight. Did you? Julian asked innocently. I must have misunderstood. When I saw the gala invitation in your desk while looking for stamps, I assumed this was the work event you mentioned. You went through my desk. Her voice was a controlled hiss. Just looking for stamps, he repeated. Should I not have come? Everyone's been so welcoming. Emmett seems particularly friendly. Before she could respond, a chime announced dinner was being served. Julian offered his arm with exaggerated courtesy. Shall we? I believe we're at table 7. Throughout dinner, Julian was the perfect spouse. Charming, attentive, interested in Charlotte's colleagues. He asked Emmett insightful questions about Horizon's expansion strategy. He complimented Elizabeth on the company's recent sustainability initiative. No one would have guessed the rage simmering beneath his polished exterior. After the main course, Charlotte excused herself to the ladies' room. Julian noticed Emmett checking his watch, then following shortly afterward. Julian gave them 2 minutes, then walked casually toward the corridor where the restrooms were located. He rounded the corner just in time to see Emmett pulling Charlotte into a secluded alcove. "What is he doing here?" Emmett demanded in a hushed voice. "I don't know," Charlotte replied. "He must have found the invitation. Get rid of him after dinner. Say you have to stay for a leadership meeting. We'll still have time at my place later." Julian retreated before they could spot him, returning to the table with a composed expression. When Charlotte returned, he smiled warmly. "Everything okay, honey? You were gone a while." "Just touching up my makeup," she lied. After dinner, as couples moved to the dance floor, Julian asked Charlotte to dance. She couldn't refuse without causing a scene. As they swayed to the music, he whispered in her ear, "By the way, I need to use your phone. Mine died, and I'm expecting a client call. Can it wait until we get home? It's the Highcrest account." He insisted. "Potential 7-figure project. 2 minutes, I promise." Reluctantly, she retrieved her phone from her clutch and handed it to him. Julian stepped away, pretending to make a call while actually navigating to her messages. He found the conversation with Emmett, quickly forwarded the most incriminating exchanges to his own email, then deleted the forwarded message from her sent folder. When he returned, Charlotte was speaking with Elizabeth. "Julian," the CEO greeted him. "I was just telling Charlotte how impressive your restoration of the Carson building was. My husband and I attended the reopening gala." "Thank you," Julian replied. "It was a labor of love." "Speaking of your work," Elizabeth continued, "would you and Charlotte join my husband and me for dinner next weekend? He's on the Historical Preservation Board and is fascinated by your approach to modernizing historical structures." Before Charlotte could intervene, Julian smiled. "We'd be delighted." As the evening progressed, Julian noted Charlotte growing increasingly agitated. When she finally suggested they leave, claiming an early meeting the next day, he agreed readily. In the car, silence stretched between them until Charlotte finally spoke. "Why did you really come tonight?" "I told you," he said. "I found the invitation and wanted to support you." "You've never been interested in these corporate events before." Julian kept his eyes on the road. 12 years of marriage, and you think you know what I'm interested in?" The question hung between them, heavier than either anticipated. When they arrived home, Charlotte checked her phone immediately, frowning at the lack of messages. "Expecting something?" Julian asked. "Just checking work emails," she said, disappearing into the bathroom. That night, as Charlotte slept beside him, Julian sent a text from his secure phone to the number Neil had provided for Emmett. "I know about you and Charlotte. We should talk tomorrow, 10 a.m., Bridgeview Park bench near the boat launch." The response came within minutes. "Who is this?" Julian didn't reply. Instead, he attached one of the photos he'd taken of Emmett and Charlotte outside the Mapleton Hotel, then turned off the phone. The game had begun. Emmett didn't show at Bridgeview Park the next morning. Julian hadn't expected him to. Men like Emmett didn't respond well to threats. But the message had served its purpose. Emmett now knew someone was watching. What Julian hadn't anticipated was Charlotte's reaction when she returned from brunch with girlfriends that afternoon, her eyes red-rimmed, her movements agitated. "We need to talk," she said, sitting across from him at the kitchen island. "Someone's threatening Emmett with false accusations." Julian set aside his laptop. "What kind of accusations?" "Some ridiculous claim about an affair." They sent him a doctored photo. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tapped nervously against the countertop. "He thinks it might be someone at work trying to sabotage his promotion." "That's disturbing," Julian replied, watching her closely. "Why are you so upset about your boss's problems?" "Because they included me in these lies," she said. "The photo showed me with him, suggesting where." She trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. "That's absurd," Julian agreed, perfectly matching her outrage. "What did security say?" "Emmett doesn't want to involve company security yet. she said. It could draw attention to the false allegations. She hesitated. He actually suggested it might be you. Julian made a show of stunned disbelief. Me? Why would I do that? That's what I told him. But he said you seemed off at the gala, watching us. I was observing my wife in her professional element, Julian countered. But if Emmett wants to discuss his concerns directly, I'm happy to meet with him. No, Charlotte said quickly. That would just escalate things. I told him you wouldn't do something like this. Well, I appreciate your faith in me, Julian replied, noting how readily she defended Emmett's interests over even considering whether her husband might have legitimate concerns. The next morning, Julian found Charlotte already awake, frowning at her laptop. Everything okay? He asked. Someone accessed my work email yesterday, she said. Its security flagged unusual login activity. Could it be related to those threats against Emmett? He glanced up sharply. She gave him a searching look. Maybe. You should change all your passwords, he suggested helpfully, knowing she would, cutting off his access, but confirming her worry that he might uncover more. That afternoon, Darius called Julian's office with troubling news. Someone's been asking questions about our firm's financial stability. A potential client called to verify we're solvent before signing a contract. What did you tell them? The truth, that we're solid. But it's weird timing. Who would suddenly question our finances when we just landed the Highcrest project? Julian knew exactly who. Keep your eyes open and back up all our client records and financial documents, just in case the counterattack escalates. That evening, Julian received an email from his bank flagging suspicious activity. Someone had attempted to access his business accounts. The IP address traced back to Horizon's corporate network. A day later, 2 potential clients canceled meetings with Julian's firm, citing concerns about recent reviews. A quick search revealed newly posted negative evaluations on industry platforms, all dated within the past 24 hours, all mentioning unprofessional conduct and financial irregularities. Charlotte's behavior shifted as well. She began mentioning Julian's moodiness to their friends, suggesting he was experiencing professional setbacks that were affecting his mental health. When they attended a dinner party that weekend, she repeatedly interrupted his stories, clarifying details in ways that subtly undermined him. It's like she's laying groundwork, Julian told Darius over lunch, creating a narrative where I'm unstable and failing professionally. Classic gaslighting, Darius agreed. Are you sure you want to keep playing this out? Why not just confront her with what you know? Julian shook his head. Not yet. Emmett is protecting his reputation before the CEO announcement. If I move too soon, they'll just deny everything and paint me as paranoid. So what's your next step? I need to understand exactly what they're planning. And I need leverage, something more than just evidence of the affair. That evening, Julian initiated an unexpected tactic. When Charlotte arrived home, he greeted her with dinner and wine. What's the occasion? She asked suspiciously. I've been distracted lately with work, he said. Thought we should reconnect. Throughout dinner, he steered the conversation toward her job, expressing renewed interest in Horizon's corporate strategy. He asked about Emmett's leadership approach, nodding appreciatively at her responses. You know, he said thoughtfully, refilling her wine glass, I've been thinking about that dinner invitation from Elizabeth. It could be good for both of us. Her husband's connections to the historical board could help my business, and you'd be seen socializing with the CEO outside of work. Charlotte hesitated, clearly caught between her secret relationship with Emmett and the professional advantage of closer ties to Elizabeth. I suppose it could be beneficial, she conceded. Great. I'll confirm with her office tomorrow, Julian said, raising his glass. To new opportunities. As they clinked glasses, Julian's phone shone with a text. He checked it, his expression darkening. What is it? Charlotte asked. Nothing important, he replied, but allowed her to see his concern. Just a client issue. Later, while Charlotte showered, Julian made a show of making a private call in their home office, loud enough for her to potentially overhear. When she emerged, he was wrapping it up. "I understand, Neil. Yes, I'll get those documents to you. No, I haven't discussed it with Charlotte yet. This needs to stay quiet until we're sure." When he ended the call, Charlotte was standing in the doorway. "Who was that?" "Just a work thing," Julian said, appearing startled by her presence. "Legal consultation for a project." The seed of doubt planted, Julian watched as Charlotte retreated to their bedroom, phone already in hand. Within minutes, he received an alert that his home office computer was being accessed remotely, using the emergency access software they'd installed years ago. He smiled to himself. They were taking the bait. The dinner with Elizabeth Townsend and her husband Gregory proved pivotal. Held at the exclusive Lakeview Club, it brought together the current CEO of Horizon Industries and her husband, a prominent figure on the city's historical preservation board, with Julian and Charlotte. Julian arrived prepared. He'd researched Gregory's preservation projects extensively and brought conceptual sketches for a restoration idea he knew would pique interest. "These are remarkable," Gregory said, examining Julian's drawings. "You've preserved the neoclassical elements while introducing modern functionality. Architecture is about honoring history while building for the future," Julian replied. Elizabeth observed their exchange with interest. "Charlotte rarely mentions your work, Julian. I'm impressed by your portfolio. Charlotte and I have always maintained separate professional lives," Julian explained smoothly, "though lately I've been taking more interest in her world at Horizon." Speaking of which, Elizabeth turned to Charlotte. "The board was quite impressed with your presentation last quarter. Emmett mentioned you've been instrumental in the new marketing strategy." Charlotte smiled, though Julian noted the tension in her shoulders at the mention of Emmett's name. "He's been an exceptional mentor." "He speaks very highly of you," Elizabeth agreed, though he seemed concerned about something when I saw him yesterday. "Mentioned potential security issues." "Nothing serious," Charlotte assured her. "Just routine precautions." As dinner progressed, Gregory offered Julian an unexpected opportunity. "The Preservation Board is seeking an architectural consultant for the downtown revitalization project. Would you be interested?" "Absolutely," Julian responded, ignoring Charlotte's surprised expression. "That's exactly the kind of project my firm specializes in." By the evening's end, Julian had secured not only a potential major contract, but also a golf outing with Gregory the following weekend. Charlotte remained quiet during the drive home, finally breaking the silence as they entered their house. "You never mentioned you were pursuing the downtown project." Julian shrugged. "It just came up naturally in conversation. And the golf invitation. Gregory's connections could transform our firm's prospects." Charlotte studied him. "You've never been interested in networking before." "People change, Charlotte. Sometimes they surprise you." The next morning, Julian received a text from an unknown number. "Back off. Final warning." He forwarded it to Neil, who traced it to a burner phone purchased near Emmett's apartment building, exactly as expected. That afternoon, Darius called with more concerning news. "Someone broke into our office. Files scattered everywhere, but nothing seems missing. Police think it was meant to intimidate rather than steal." "Security cameras?" Julian asked. "Disabled. But a neighboring business caught a black Tesla on their footage." Emmett was growing desperate. Exactly as Julian had anticipated. The following day, Julian attended Gregory's charity golf tournament. As expected, several board members from Horizon were present, including members of the selection committee for the CEO position. During lunch, Julian found himself seated with Dennis Gray, the head of the selection committee. Their conversation remained casual until Dennis mentioned Emmett. "Impressive fellow," Dennis commented. "Clean record, strong leadership. Elizabeth speaks highly of him." Julian nodded. "He's certainly focused on his career." "You know him well." "Only through Charlotte." "They work closely together." Dennis' expression shifted slightly. "How closely?" Julian hesitated, as if reluctant to continue. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask someone at Horizon about professional boundaries. Charlotte mentions late meetings, but I've noticed communications that seem unusually personal. What kind of communications? Dennis asked, voice carefully neutral. Text messages, late-night calls. Probably nothing. Julian backtracked. Corporate culture can blur professional lines. Indeed, it can, Dennis agreed, but Horizon takes its code of conduct very seriously, especially regarding relationships between executives and their direct reports. Julian looked appropriately concerned. I'm sure there's nothing inappropriate happening. Charlotte values her professional reputation too much. The seed planted, Julian changed the subject, but noticed Dennis observing Emmett more carefully throughout the afternoon. That evening, Julian received a call from Elizabeth Townsend herself, asking if he could come to her office the next morning. There's a matter I'd like to discuss in person, she said. It concerns Charlotte. Of course, Julian agreed. Is everything all right? Let's talk tomorrow, Elizabeth replied. When Julian arrived home, Charlotte was waiting for him. Her expression was cold. I just received a meeting request from HR and Elizabeth for tomorrow morning. Do you know anything about this? No, Julian lied. Maybe it's about your promotion. Don't play innocent, she snapped. Emmett received the same summons. What did you say to Dennis Gray today? Dennis, we just talked about architecture and golf. Charlotte's eyes narrowed. You're trying to sabotage me, just like you've been sabotaging Emmett with those anonymous messages. Charlotte, I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying. She stepped closer, voice shaking. I know you installed tracking software on my phone. I know you've been following me. Emmett's security team found everything. Julian allowed his expression to harden. And what exactly did they find, Charlotte? Evidence that I'm concerned about my wife's increasingly secretive behavior, or evidence of something you don't want to admit. This is exactly why I never told anyone at work about our problems, she hissed. You're unstable, paranoid, jealous of my success. Is that the story you're going with? Julian asked quietly. That I'm unstable, not that you've been sleeping with your boss for months. The color drained from Charlotte's face. You have no proof of that. Julian smiled coldly. That's where you're wrong. Before she could respond, his phone rang. The screen displayed Darius's name. I need to take this, Julian said, stepping into his office and closing the door. It's happening, Darius reported. Someone tried to access our firm's bank accounts again. But this time, the bank's fraud department caught it and reversed the transfers. They're recording the attempts and filing a police report. Perfect timing, Julian replied. Keep me updated. When he emerged, Charlotte was on her phone, speaking frantically in hushed tones. She ended the call when she saw him. Everything okay? He asked. Fine, she replied stiffly. I'm staying in a hotel tonight. I can't be around you right now. Julian nodded. Probably for the best. We both have important meetings tomorrow. After she left, Julian poured himself a drink and sat in the darkened living room. Tomorrow would determine if his carefully constructed plan would succeed or if Emmett's resources would overpower him. Either way, there was no turning back. Julian arrived at Horizon Industries headquarters 30 minutes before his scheduled meeting with Elizabeth. The glass and steel tower reflected the morning sunlight, symbolic of the corporate power Emmett and Charlotte had wielded against him. Impressive from the outside, but ultimately transparent. Security escorted him to a waiting area outside the executive floor. Through the glass walls, he could see various conference rooms, including one where Emmett sat alone, repeatedly checking his watch. At precisely 9 a.m., Elizabeth's assistant appeared. Mr. West, Miss Townsend will see you now. The CEO's office occupied the northeast corner of the building, offering panoramic views of the city. Elizabeth stood as he entered, gesturing to a seating area rather than her desk. Thank you for coming, Julian, she began. I apologize for the unusual request. Not at all, he replied. Though I'm curious about its nature. Elizabeth studied him carefully. Some concerning information has come to the board's attention regarding Emmett Bishop and your wife. Before we proceed with formal interviews, I wanted to speak with you privately. I see, Julian said. May I ask what kind of information? Allegations of an inappropriate relationship, she replied directly, along with suggestions that Mr. Bishop may have fast-tracked Charlotte's promotion based on personal rather than professional considerations. Julian maintained a neutral expression. That's disturbing. Indeed. Normally, we wouldn't involve spouses in internal matters. But given the sensitivity of the situation and certain comments you made to Dennis Gray, I thought a discreet conversation might be illuminating. I appreciate your discretion, Julian said. What exactly would you like to know? Do you have any reason to believe these allegations might be true? Julian sighed, the picture of a reluctant husband. I've had concerns about their professional relationship for some time. Late-night calls, weekend meetings, text messages that seemed personal rather than professional. Have you confronted Charlotte about these concerns? I tried, gently. She accused me of being paranoid and jealous of her success. Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully. Dennis mentioned you had observed communications between them. This was the crucial moment. Julian reached into his jacket and removed a USB drive. I didn't want to do this, but given the circumstances, this contains text messages between them. I apologize for having accessed them, but Charlotte left her cloud account open on our shared computer. Elizabeth accepted the drive. Our HR department will need to review this. You understand this may have serious consequences for both Emmett and Charlotte. I understand, Julian replied, but I believe in professional integrity. If Emmett has been using his position inappropriately, that reflects on Horizon's culture. Elizabeth nodded in agreement. There's something else you should know, Julian continued. Since discovering these messages, I've experienced what appears to be retaliation. Business clients receiving false information about my firm, attempts to access my company's financial accounts, personal credit fraud, all traceable to Horizon's corporate network. Elizabeth's expression darkened. Those are serious allegations. I've documented everything, Julian assured her. I wasn't planning to pursue it legally. I was hoping to resolve things privately with Charlotte. But if these are connected to Mr. Bishop's attempts to silence me, I will personally ensure this is investigated thoroughly, Elizabeth promised. Corporate resources should never be used for personal vendettas. Their meeting concluded with Elizabeth asking Julian to remain available throughout the morning. He was escorted to a private conference room, where he watched the corporate drama unfold through glass walls. Emmett was summoned next, his confident stride faltering slightly as he entered Elizabeth's office. 30 minutes later, he emerged looking ashen, immediately pulling out his phone as he walked briskly toward his own office. At 11:15, Julian observed 2 security guards entering Emmett's office. Minutes later, they escorted him out, carrying a box of personal items. Emmett's face was rigid with suppressed fury. At 11:45, Charlotte emerged from Elizabeth's office, her face pale with shock. As she walked past the conference room, she finally noticed Julian. The look she gave him contained pure venom. At noon, Elizabeth's assistant escorted Julian back to the CEO's office. "Thank you for your patience," Elizabeth said, her expression grave. "This has been an extremely difficult morning. Based on the evidence provided and our internal investigation, Emmett Bishop has been terminated for violations of our ethics policy." Julian nodded solemnly. "And Charlotte?" "She has been placed on administrative leave pending further review. The text messages clearly show she was a willing participant, but there are concerns about power dynamics, given Emmett's position as her superior." "I understand," Julian said quietly. "May I ask what happens next?" "That depends partly on you," Elizabeth replied. "Horizon would prefer to handle this matter internally, without public scandal. However, if you intend to pursue legal action regarding the financial attacks, my priority is resolving my personal situation with Charlotte," Julian assured her. "As for the business interference, If it stops immediately, I'm inclined to let the matter rest. Relief flickered across Elizabeth's face. I believe that can be arranged. And Julian, for what it's worth, I'm truly sorry about all of this, both professionally and personally. As Julian left Horizon's headquarters, his phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. You've destroyed everything. Hope you're satisfied. Don't come home tonight if you know what's good for you. Julian didn't reply. The first phase of his plan had succeeded beyond expectations, but he knew the personal reckoning still lay ahead. The fallout was swift and severe. By evening, the local business community was buzzing with rumors about Emmett's abrupt departure from Horizon Industries. The official statement cited personal reasons, but insiders whispered about ethical violations involving a female executive. Julian checked into a hotel, as Charlotte had requested, not out of fear, but strategic patience. That night, Darius called with disturbing news. Someone broke into our office, he reported. Files scattered everywhere, but nothing seemed stolen. Police think it was intimidation. Security cameras disabled, Darius said, but a neighboring business caught a black Tesla on their footage. Emmett was growing desperate, exactly as Julian had anticipated. The next morning, Julian met Neil for breakfast at a diner far from their usual haunts. They're scrambling, Neil confirmed, sliding a folder across the table. Emmett liquidated 2 investment accounts yesterday. Charlotte emptied your joint savings account. $30,000. Julian nodded. Expected. There's more. Emmett's been making calls to contacts in Winfield and Singapore. Sounds like he's looking for exit options before the real scandal breaks. And the other matter. Neil handed him a USB drive. All there. Financial records showing Emmett's previous settlements with former colleagues, 3 women at different companies, paid for their silence. His ex-wife's divorce settlement included a hefty NDA. Horizon's board will be interested in this, Julian mused, especially since they were about to name him CEO. Be careful, Julian, Neil warned. Emmett's desperate, and Charlotte knows all your vulnerabilities. That afternoon, Julian received a call from Dennis Gray, requesting a discreet meeting at his club. Upon arrival, Julian found not only Dennis, but 3 other Horizon board members. We'll be direct, Dennis began after introductions. Elizabeth shared your evidence regarding Emmett and your wife. The board has additional concerns about his history that have recently come to light. One of the other members, Nadine Lawson, continued, we're facing a delicate situation. Emmett threatens legal action for wrongful termination. He claims you fabricated evidence due to personal vendettas. I understand your position, Julian replied calmly. But the evidence speaks for itself. Perhaps, Dennis acknowledged, but legal battles create publicity none of us want. Shareholders get nervous, stock prices fluctuate. Julian recognized the implied request. What exactly are you asking of me? Your discretion, Nadine stated. In exchange for Horizon's assurance that any business disruptions you've experienced will cease immediately. I have no interest in damaging Horizon's reputation, Julian assured them. My concern was always Emmett's abuse of power and its effect on my marriage. The relief around the table was palpable. There is one other matter, Julian added carefully. I believe Emmett may have a history of similar situations at previous companies. If that information were to reach you through appropriate channels, would the board be interested? Dennis and Nadine exchanged glances. The board is always concerned with the integrity of its executive team, past and present, Dennis replied carefully. The meeting concluded with tacit understanding. Julian would provide the additional evidence through a third party, allowing the board to pressure Emmett into a quiet departure without legal challenges. As Julian left the club, his phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. We need to talk. Meet me at home. 7 p.m. When Julian arrived at their house that evening, he found Charlotte waiting in the living room, a glass of wine in hand. She'd lost the corporate polish of recent months, her eyes red-rimmed, hair pulled back carelessly. So this was your plan all along, she began without preamble. Destroy my career to punish me? No, Julian replied, remaining standing. My plan was to understand why my wife of 12 years suddenly decided I was nothing more than a roommate. Don't be dramatic. It was one comment at a party. It was months of lies, Charlotte. Hotel receipts, fake work meetings, deleted messages. You were systematically erasing our marriage while I watched it happen. She took a long sip of wine. And your solution was to get me fired. To ruin Emmett's life. You got yourself fired by violating corporate ethics. Emmett ruined his own life by pursuing a married subordinate and then using company resources to attack her husband's business. Those are just allegations, she countered weakly. Allegations with evidence, Julian said. The same evidence I've shared with Horizon's board, the police investigating the fraud attempts against my firm, and my attorney. Charlotte's composure cracked. What do you want from me, Julian? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Emmett was. He represented everything I thought I wanted. Power, ambition, connections. And what did I represent? The struggling architect you outgrew. You were comfortable, she replied, the words clearly painful for both of them. Safe. I thought I wanted more. And now I have nothing. Administrative leave is just the first step. Once the ethics investigation concludes, I'll be terminated. Emmett's already blaming me, claiming I manipulated him. No other company will touch me after this. Julian studied the woman he'd loved for 12 years, searching for any remnant of the person he'd married. What did you think would happen, Charlotte? That I'd just accept being introduced as your roommate? That I wouldn't notice the affair? I thought you'd fight for me, she whispered unexpectedly. Confront me, rage at me, demand I choose. Not orchestrate this corporate execution. The admission caught Julian off guard. Would you have chosen me if I had? Her silence was answer enough. I need you out of the house by the end of the week, Julian said finally. My attorney will contact you about divorce proceedings. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Charlotte remarked, a hint of grudging admiration in her voice. The dedicated husband, the wronged spouse, while I'm the corporate climber who sacrificed her marriage for advancement. You wrote that narrative, Julian replied. I just made sure people read it. As he turned to leave, Charlotte called after him. Emmett won't let this go. He's not like me. He doesn't accept defeat. I'm counting on it, Julian said quietly, closing the door behind him. 3 days later, Emmett Bishop made his move. Julian was meeting with Gregory Townsend about the downtown revitalization project when his phone began buzzing with urgent messages. A local business blog had published an exclusive about architectural fraud, claiming Julian's firm had falsified structural safety reports on 3 major projects. The source was anonymous, but claimed to be a former employee with documentation. Simultaneously, the city building department received formal complaints about each project, triggering mandatory inspections. Darius called in a panic as reporters began contacting their clients. It's a coordinated attack, Julian told Gregory calmly. My firm is being targeted by Emmett Bishop in retaliation for the Horizon situation. Gregory's expression darkened. Elizabeth mentioned there were concerns about his departure. But falsifying safety claims is serious. It could destroy public confidence in your projects, even if disproven. The claims are entirely fabricated, Julian assured him. Our work undergoes rigorous third-party verification. But Emmett knows that public perception can do damage regardless of facts. What will you do? Julian checked his watch. Exactly what I've been planning for. That afternoon, Dennis Gray received a package from an anonymous source containing Emmett's complete history. Financial records of previous settlements, NDAs with former colleagues, corporate funds used for personal expenses. The package was simultaneously delivered to 5 financial journalists known for investigating corporate malfeasance. By evening, Emmett's attempt to damage Julian had backfired spectacularly. Horizon Industries issued a statement distancing itself from recent, unfounded allegations against West architecture, while emphasizing its commitment to ethical corporate practices and zero tolerance for retaliatory behavior. The business blog retracted its story, citing concerns about the source's credibility. The building department expedited inspections of Julian's projects, finding all safety standards not only met but exceeded. But Emmett's most desperate move came at midnight, when Julian received a call from Neil. "Security alert at your house," Neil reported. "Motion detectors triggered in your home office. Camera feed. Masked figure. Appears to be searching your files. Police dispatched." Julian arrived just as the police were handcuffing Emmett Bishop in the driveway. The former executive had broken in, apparently seeking to retrieve or plant evidence. Instead, he triggered the enhanced security system Julian had installed weeks earlier. He had these on him, an officer told Julian, showing him a folder of doctored financial documents and a flash drive. "Looks like he was planning to plant false evidence." The arrest made headlines by morning. Former Horizon executive arrested in break-in. The corporate world Emmett had navigated so smoothly now watched his public downfall with the same fascination reserved for any fallen power player. Charlotte called Julian that afternoon, her voice hollow. "Emmett's attorney reached out to me. He's claiming I put him up to this, that we planned everything together to secure my promotion." "Did you?" Julian asked simply. "No," she whispered. "But no one will believe that now." 1 week later, Julian attended a board meeting at Horizon Industries, no longer as a spouse, but as a consultant. The downtown revitalization project had expanded, with Horizon investing as a major corporate partner. Elizabeth introduced him to the board with genuine respect. "Mr. West brings not only architectural expertise, but a commitment to integrity that aligns with Horizon's values." After the meeting, Elizabeth asked Julian to stay behind. "I never properly thanked you," she said when they were alone. "Your evidence saved us from a potentially disastrous CEO appointment." "I was protecting my own interests," Julian replied honestly. "Nevertheless, the board recognizes your discretion throughout this uncomfortable situation. The partnership on the downtown project is well-deserved." "And Charlotte?" Julian asked. "What will happen to her?" Elizabeth's expression softened slightly. "The ethics committee concluded their investigation. She'll be offered a settlement package in exchange for her resignation and non-disclosure. We won't prevent her from finding employment elsewhere, though not at her previous level." Julian nodded, surprised to find he felt no satisfaction at this news. Fair enough. As spring turned to summer, Julian moved forward with rebuilding his life. The downtown project thrived under his guidance. His firm expanded, hiring 2 additional architects to handle the increasing workload. The divorce proceeded without drama. Charlotte accepted the terms Julian offered, fair but not generous. She moved to Lakeburg eventually, taking a mid-level position with a marketing firm. They didn't speak again after the final papers were signed. 1 year to the day after the company Gala, where everything had imploded, Julian hosted a small gathering at his newly purchased downtown loft. Darius was there with his wife, Neil, and his partner, Gregory and Elizabeth Townsend, and several other friends and colleagues who had supported him through the previous year. As the evening mooned down, Darius found Julian on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. "Quite a view," Darius commented. "Worth every penny, I'd say." Julian smiled. "It's not about the money. It's about building something that lasts." "Speaking of building," Darius said carefully, "that woman from the Historical Society has been asking about you again. Nadine. Smart, attractive, clearly interested." "I noticed," Julian admitted. "It's been a year, Julian. Life goes on." Julian considered this. "I'm not sure I'm ready for another blueprint just yet. Some designs evolve naturally," Darius suggested. "No need for detailed plans." Inside, Nadine caught Julian's eye across the room and smiled. He smiled back, surprised to find it felt genuine. Later, as guests departed, Elizabeth paused at the door. "I heard from Dennis that Emmett's back in Winfield. Small financial firm, nothing like what he had here. And you? Julian asked. Any regrets about not promoting him? None whatsoever, she replied firmly. The board made the right decision, even if we needed help seeing it clearly. After everyone had gone, Julian stood alone in his new home. On a shelf near the entrance sat a single framed photo, not of his former marriage, but of his first completed building design. A reminder that he had built something worthwhile once and could do so again. He picked up his phone, finding Nadine's contact information that Darius had subtly added earlier. His finger hovered over it momentarily. Some blueprints were worth revisiting, others were better left in the archives. The trick was knowing which was which. Julian made his choice and pressed call. 5 years later, the expansive windows of Fernandez and West Architecture's downtown headquarters offered a commanding view of the skyline. A skyline that now featured 3 distinctive buildings designed by the firm. On the 40th floor of the Horizon Tower, Julian West stood with his back to the panorama, addressing the gathered team of 28 architects and designers. The Maple Creek Cultural Center represents more than just our largest project to date, he explained, gesturing to the intricate model dominating the conference table. It's a statement about preserving history while creating space for future generations. At 41, Julian had grown into his success with a quiet confidence. The lean hunger of his earlier career had transformed into something more measured and assured. Silver threaded his temples now, lending gravitas to his appearance, while the lines at the corners of his eyes spoke of both laughter and hardship overcome. Darius, now handling the firm's business operations exclusively, leaned against the wall with undisguised pride. The struggling 2-man operation they'd started had evolved into one of the city's premier architectural firms, known for innovative historical renovations and sustainable urban designs. As the meeting concluded, Julian's assistant, Gia, approached with a tablet. The mayor's office confirmed for Thursday, and the Architectural Digest photographer needs to reschedule to next week. Fine with both, Julian replied, gathering his notes. Anything else? Ms. Hartford called. She'll meet you at Osteria at 7 instead of 6:30. Board meeting ran long. Julian nodded, a small smile softening his features at the mention of Diane Hartford, executive director of the city's Arts Council. His relationship with her had progressed slowly and deliberately over the past 4 years, both of them cautious after previous marriages. Tell Darius I want his input on the Maple Creek materials budget before I leave, he added, heading toward his office. Inside, he closed the door and took a moment to absorb the quiet. The space reflected the man he'd become, ordered without being rigid, the organic shapes of his architectural models balanced against the clean lines of modern furniture. A series of framed photographs lined one wall, the ribbon cutting for the downtown revitalization project. Julian shaking hands with the mayor, the firm's team at the annual charity gala. Conspicuously absent were any images from his previous life with Charlotte. Julian settled behind his desk, opened his laptop, and found himself staring at the calendar date, September 15th, 5 years to the day since he'd made that fateful phone call at Horizon Industries Gala, the night everything changed. With a practiced motion born of habit, he opened his personal email and checked a specific folder containing sporadic updates from Neil, who had left corporate security 3 years earlier to start his own firm. The most recent was from 2 months ago, detailing Emmett's modest job in Winfield and Charlotte's progress at a marketing firm in Lakeburg, both living lesser versions of the grandeur they'd once pursued. Julian closed the email without replying. He no longer needed these updates. They had become a ritual, a quarterly reminder of the life he'd left behind and the calculated risks he'd taken. His desk phone buzzed. Mr. West, Gia announced, Darius has those budget figures for you. Send him in, Julian replied, closing the email folder and returning to the present. Darius entered with a flash drive and his characteristic energy. At 43, he remained the more exuberant partner, handling client relations with natural charm, while Julian focused on design and creative direction. The Maple Creek numbers looked good, Darius began, then paused, studying his friend's face. Everything okay? You've got that look. What look? Julian asked. The one you get on September 15th every year, Darius replied without missing a beat. The anniversary look. Julian leaned back in his chair, just reflecting. 5 years is a significant milestone. 5 years of unprecedented success, Darius corrected. 5 years since you made the decision that saved both our careers and set us on this path. That's one way of looking at it. Darius settled into the chair across from him. Have you heard anything? The usual update from Neil. Nothing significant. And you're still checking because... Julian considered the question. Habit, mostly. Insurance, partly. You know what my wife would say about this, Darius observed. Talia would tell you that continuing to track their lives means they still have power over yours. Talia charges $200 an hour to dispense that wisdom, Julian countered with a slight smile, and she's worth every penny. Seriously though, Julian, at what point do you stop monitoring people who are no longer relevant to your life? The question hung between them, more pointed than their usual exchanges, perhaps because of the 5-year milestone, perhaps because Julian had been considering the same point himself. I'll think about it, he conceded finally. Good. Darius stood. Now about these Maple Creek figures. They spent the next hour immersed in project details, the conversation about the past temporarily set aside. When Darius left, Julian remained at his desk, reflecting on his friend's question. The truth was more complex than he'd admitted. Tracking Charlotte and Emmett wasn't about fear or power. It was about understanding the ripple effects of his own actions. The architect in him needed to know how his designs play out, even the human ones. At 6:30, Julian left the office for his dinner with Diane. As the elevator descended, he made a decision. 5 years was enough. Tonight would be his last update from the past. It was time to build fully on the present. The Winfield rain fell in a persistent drizzle, rendering Canary Wharf's gleaming towers into blurred monoliths. But that was Emmett's life now, a world away. The story of his frustration, Bryant's daughter, all of it continued elsewhere, and similarly for Charlotte in Lakeburg. But Julian had chosen to close that door. At Osteria Luca, the restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the soft clink of fine glassware. Julian sipped his wine, waiting for Diane to arrive. Their favorite table, tucked into a corner alcove, offered the perfect balance of intimacy and observation. A muted television above the bar displayed a financial news segment about Elizabeth Townsend's retirement, an announcement Julian had already congratulated her on earlier that day. His phone buzzed with a text from Diane. 5 minutes away. Board meeting ran even longer than expected. Julian closed his eyes briefly, thinking of how far he had come since that painful night 5 years ago. He no longer needed to look over his shoulder. He no longer needed to orchestrate corporate defenses against betrayal. He had built a new, solid foundation. And he felt whole. Diane arrived moments later, stepping gracefully through the restaurant. He rose to greet her, heart feeling unexpectedly light. She smiled when she saw him, a smile he recognized as genuine warmth, the opposite of the carefully guarded expressions he had once known. Some designs were worth revisiting, others best left in the archives, but Julian West had learned the difference. Now, as he held out a chair for Diane, he embraced the future they were quietly constructing together. He didn't need a blueprint for what came next. He just needed the courage to keep building.